Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Jeremiah 12:16 is not an open door for the heathen. And pretty much this comes from this video you see before you. This one, them Yah Israelites. Gentiles must learn Yah's ways, Jeremiah 12:16. He put Jerem 12:16 and he put a fire sign like that's an open door for these heathens. And it's not. Now, ultimately in the kingdom of heaven, the nations are going to, follow the law, statutes, and commandments, our law, statutes, and commandments, because they're going to have no choice. But their position is always going to be that they're going to be slaves. And that's it. That's what they were created for, and that's what they're going to be. Matter of fact, let's show you that real quick, because there was another point I want to hit before we go to that precept. When we go to Leviticus 25 and verse 44, it says, both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, meaning your slave men and slave women, which thou shalt have, shall be of the what? Of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall you buy bondmen and bondmaids. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you. Now, this stranger is different from the other stranger, because there's a particular stranger you can't sell meat to, bad meat to. There's a particular stranger you can't, charge usury on. And that's dealing with the Israelite foreigners or sojourners that are temporary inhabitants, of these lands where they come to in Israel, Jerusalem, Judea, and all them different areas. You will have Israelites that came from far countries that were considered sojourners. But instead of distinguishing in the English between stranger or actual heathen and a sojourner, instead of just putting sojourner for stranger, they put stranger where you have actual heathens and when you have Israelite foreigners or Israelite sojourners. So you have to be able to distinguish. And that's how we go back to the original language that these things were written in to give you a better understanding. So it says, moreover, of the children of the strangers. Now, when you look up this word strangers here, you have the word thawashab, or bun, or the children, thawashab. Thawashab is another way where 95% of the time, just like the word nakar, 95% of the time when you read this, it's dealing with the other nations, but 5% of the time is dealing with Israelites, depending on the context of the scripture. So thawashab, sojourner, stranger. It's really a stranger, not a sojourner, but sometimes it could apply to a sojourner, meaning an Israelite foreigner, depending on the context of the scripture. And the word goes back to the word yeshab, which means to sit or to dwell. Pretty much yeshab is down, yad yamata, hands down. All right, so yeshab is to sit. Well, actually, you say, like when we do the Sabbath service, after you finish the prayers, yeshabium, meaning sit, plural. All right. So it's a stranger, an actual heathen, but sometimes it could apply to an Israelite depending on the context of the scripture. And we know that in this particular scripture, it's not dealing with an Israelite. See here, a dweller, but not outlandish, especially as distinguished from a native citizen. So this can apply to Israelites, but it could also, most of the time, it applies to the heathens, and a temporary inmate or mere larger resident alien. See, so it's a heathen, actual heathen in this case, that is in that land because he doesn't live in that land. He was brought to that land to be what? To be a servant. Now, when we go back, we'll read it again. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, the heathen, the actual heathen, not the Israelite sojourners, of them shall you buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, and they shall be your possession. This is the job of the heathen. They are to be slaves. That's it. They will never be on par with the Israelites. In the kingdom of heaven, yes, they will learn the law, statutes, and commandments. They will have to, but they will still not be on the level of an Israelite. They will never be on the level of an Israelite. They will not be close to the level of the Israelite. You will not show me anywhere in the scriptures where it tells you that the 144,000, any of them are heathens that follow the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord. You ain't going to find that. You're not going to have any governors, any official government position in the kingdom of heaven that's going to be a heathen there. It ain't going to happen. Okay? It says, and you shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondmen forever, your slaves for what? Forever, not your equals. But over your brethren, the children of Israel, you shall not rule one over another with rigor, right? Because you had something called indentured servants. You had Israelites, which are known as Hebrews, also in the scriptures, that were indentured servants. They may have fallen into decay. They may have been bad gamblers, or they may have made a bad investment, or they may have lost everything, their riches in a fire, or whatever the case may be, and they have to start all over again. So they would have to go and, become the slave or servant or indentured servant of an Israelite, and sometimes they had to sell themselves to the nations. Okay, and that's what the redemption, the law of redemption is about, of redeeming a poor man. This is why when you read the curses, Deuteronomy 28 from the 16th verse to the end, it says, no man shall buy you, no man shall redeem you, no man shall save you. Why? Because you did have the law of redemption, to where if an Israelite fell into decay, became poor, sold himself to a heathen, right? And you, being the kin of his, had the money to redeem him, you will go and pay a certain amount of money or cattle or whatever it was that heathen wanted, and you would pay it to them and get your brother out of that captivity, out of that servitude. So in the book of Deuteronomy 28, no man would be able to do that. No man would be able to deliver us. And we've seen many countless of times where you had among Judah, you've had Benjamin, you had Marcus Garvey. Then among Judah, you had Martin Luther King, you had Malcolm X, you had Denmark Vesey, you had Gabriel Prosser, you had many individuals that tried to liberate the so-called Negroes, the tribe of Judah, from captivity, and they were not able to. That's what it means. And when Yahushua comes back, he's going to be the one to redeem us. And the elder that's on the comment board now, he did a lesson, the elder Manata Zakba. Elder Apostle Gabar did a lesson, because I watched the elder Manata Zakba's video this morning with that chick calling herself trying to break it down. Then I started to watch Elder Apostle Gabar's video, but I didn't get a chance to watch that yet. Elder Apostle Tahar is doing probably on the tail end of a premiere right now, and he mentioned it at the beginning of his lesson, and this is the part of the redemption. Okay, you can read on there, but the point here is that strangers or the heathens, the actual heathens, that's what their position is going to be in the kingdom of heaven. That's what their position has always been. That's what their position is always going to be. Let's give you one more precept, and then we'll move on to the next point. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 10. And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their king shall minister unto thee. This is in the kingdom of heaven. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. So even if the heathen, come to follow the laws, which they're not going to do right now, they're going to do that in the kingdom of heaven. They're only going to be slaves. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, which are the riches of the heathens. Now, every time you read the word Gentile, it doesn't mean that this is talking about the actual heathens. In this case, it is. When you go to the word Gentile, okay, I'm going to show you something. Most of you already know, but those of you that don't know, the word Gentile, singular, is Gawaya, which means nation. The word Gentiles, plural, Gawayim, is nations. Now, this individual here, right, he goes, he is a Yah Israelite. He believes that the sons of Japhet, he believes those are the Edomites, the so-called white people, and that they're the only Gentiles because of the misconception that he has, or they have, because I've run into this before many times, misconception of Genesis chapter 10. And I'll start at 2, but then I'll jump to the 5th verse. It says, the sons of Japhet, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus, which he had some of these right, in his description of the areas that they were in. But these were actual brown-skinned people. The Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, all of these were brown-skinned people. You can go into different artwork, different terracottas from the Etruscans. You can go into people called the Picts, but the best ones you can find are the Etruscans and definitely the Minoans, which they're still wall reliefs of paintings that they painted of themselves, and you can see that they're brown-skinned people. Look like the so-called Polynesian type people. All right, because that's exactly who they are. Now, in some cases in art of the Minoans, you'll see the women painted as white, so you would think that the women were white and the men were brown-skinned, but that's not the case. When you do the research, the reason why the women were painted in white was to distinguish them from the males, because when you look at them, they look the same. They had the long hair. That's where the ancient Greek custom comes from the actual, Japhetic people, brown-skinned people, which the Greeks took on as their custom, so the women and the men look similar to each other when you go to the paintings. But when you research it, the women were painted white to distinguish them from the males. You could look that up. All right. I think it may be in, if I'm not mistaken, in Wikipedia under Minoans, either Minoans or Minoan art, and you could see it for yourself. Matter of fact, I just gave you a quick glimpse into the Minoan art itself, so you could get a glimpse, images. I want to get one that has both men and women in it. Okay, they got them separate for some reason. Some have both. Here we go. Here you have an image, a Minoan image, and you see the men are brown skin, the curly hair, long hair. That's where the custom of the Greeks comes from. The actual brown skinned people of Japhet, which the Edomite Greeks took over. And then you see the woman, she's painted white. Why? This is to distinguish the females from the males. Right? And if she didn't have her bosoms or her breasts hanging out like that, you would not be able to distinguish between the two. Because they both had the long hair, they both, look similar. But the white painting in this Minoan art distinguished the males from the females. So the females were painted white, the males was painted brown, but they were all this color, brown-skinned people. And this is art. This is actual art that still exists to this day, from ruins of the Minoans. All right. Just wanted to show you that. So going back here to Genesis 10, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus, which today some of those regions are called, these particular regions are called so-called Europe. The elder Malcolm, he goes into the history of that is really all Asia, but today the world knows it as Europe, okay? And the so-called white people, the Edomites, conquered and colonized those lands and inserted themselves there. So now when you see them there, you'll see so-called white people there, what you're thinking that they're the original inhabitants of that. You're thinking that they're the original Greeks, but they're not. Now, when you jump to the 5th verse, it says, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided. See, so the only Gentiles are Japhites. And this is an argument that these Yah Israelites bring out. This is an argument. I don't know if the individual I was dealing with on the comment board going way back had to be like 08, 09, around there somewhere. He was saying the same thing. Well, they're the only ones that are called Gentiles. Well, if you understood what the word Gentile meant, as we showed you before, the word Gentiles right there, Gentiles is the word Gawaya or Gawayim. Here it says Hagawayim, the Gentiles or the nations. Okay. Now, when you read on, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their land, because I pointed this out to that individual, everyone after his tongue, after their families in their nations. And I said the word nations is there in the English. Now, when you go back, I told him, go back to the Hebrew. Look at what the word for nations is there in the Hebrew. Gawaya, ba Gawayim, in nations. It's the same word. Gentile means nations. They're interchangeable with the word nations. Now, sometimes when you see the word Gentiles, it applies to the actual heathens most of the time, but every once in a while it applies to the Israelites. And let me see if this says that. Gawaya, nation people, usually of non-Hebrew people, of descendants of Abraham, of Israel. See? So sometimes that word can be used for Israelites. We looked up the word nations, right? For the word Gentiles, Gawaya. Right? You saw we grabbed the word for Gentiles of Israel. So sometimes it applies to the Israelites. Now, let's go real quick to Genesis 35. Show you something here also. And 9. And the Most High appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padan Aram, or as some say, Padan Aram, and blessed him. And the Most High said unto him, thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. Jacob from the Hebrew Ya'ikwa, which means supplanter. Israel from the name Yasha'Allah, which means he Prince power, he Prince God, or he Prince power, because you have these black conscious individuals. Well, notice the name is Israel, Isis, Ra, and El. No, it goes back to the Hebrew Yasha'Allah. That was the translation that they brought into the English, to let you know where the name Yasha'Allah appeared. But the actual origins of the name is Yashar-Allah, he Prince God, or he Prince power. It says, and the power said unto him, I am the power almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come of thy loins. So already the Lord told Jacob that out of his sons, there's going to be the nation of Israel, but then within each tribe, there's going to be nations, plural, because each tribe is as big as a nation today. They become massive. Well, how can that be? Well, didn't Jacob and Esau, weren't they born of the same father and mother? Doesn't Esau have a nation of his own? So when we look up the word nation and company of nations, let's look up those three. It says nation, which is what? Gawaya, singular. And company, which you're going to get that of nations, plural, Gawayum, which is the same word used for Gentiles. So you have to know when it applies to the Israelites, and you have to know when it applies to the heathens. All right, the word company is the word quahal, assembly, company, congregation, convocation. So it's going to be an assembly of nations among the Israelites. Out of Jacob's 12 sons, you're going to have a nation and nations, company of nations, because each tribe is a nation in his own that all belong to the same nation of Israel. All right, so let's see what else we got. All right, so we're going to leave it at that because, now you get the idea with the word nation, Gentiles. Oh, let's go back to this real quick. So the Japhetic people, which are so-called Polynesians today, brown-skinned people, they are not the only Gentiles. And if you understand what the word Gentiles means, you would not just apply that to the nations. It applies to every people on the planet Earth is considered Gentile or nation. But you have a distinction between the ones that receive favor from the Most High, which are the Israelite foreigners or sojourners, and the ones that do not, that are just straight up slaves and possessions. So this is the scripture that he brought out in Jeremiah 12. This is what he brought out here. And I put this in the description box in case any of you want to have fun. Jeremiah 12, I'm starting at 14. Thus saith Yahweh, against all mine evil neighbors that touch the inheritance which I have caused my people Israel to inherit, behold, I will pluck them out of their land, and pluck out the house of Judah from among them. And it shall come to pass after that I have plucked them out, I will return and have compassion on them, and will bring them again, and every man to his heritage, and every man to his land. And eventually we're going to go back to that land in the kingdom of heaven. And these nations, they will be forced to follow our laws, statutes, and commandments. That's what Isaiah, the 2nd chapter, and Micah, the 4th chapter, are all about. And it shall come to pass, if they will diligently learn the ways of my people, to swear by my name, the Lord liveth, as they taught my people to swear by Baal, then shall they be built in the midst of my people. Doesn't mean that they're going to be a part of the Israelites. You're going to be built in the midst of the people, and you're going to be what? Slaves. We just read that in the book of Leviticus, the 25th chapter, that their job is to be slaves. And that's it. Matter of fact, let's go from there to real quick, and we'll come back to it. Revelation, the last book of the scriptures, chapter 11. I'm going to start at 1. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, which are measuring sticks. And these measuring sticks are symbolic of the scriptures. And the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of the Most High. What is the temple of the Most High? Let's go to First Corinthians. There's a couple of them. But let's go to the one in First Corinthians chapter 3. Because a royal people needs servants. That's what the job of the nations are. Servants, slaves. 1 Corinthians 3:16, know ye not that you are the temple of the Most High, you Israelites, and that the Spirit of the Most High dwelleth in you. If any man defile the temple of the Most High, him shall the Most High destroy. For the temple of the Most High is holy, which temple you are. So, only measure and teach the temple of the Most High, which are the Israelites, and the altar, which is what? Where the priesthood would, officiate the business of the Lord for Israel. and them that worship therein, which is who? The congregation of the nation of Israel, right? So you measure that, you teach them. But the court that which is without the temple, leave out, and measure it not, do not teach it. For it is given unto what? The Gentiles. In this case, it's talking about the actual heathen. And in some case, in the New Testament, you could say 85% of the time when it speaks about the Gentiles, which is showing them favor, it's talking about the Israelites. And about 10 to 15% of the time when it speaks about judgment against the heathen, that's talking about the other nations. Okay? And the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. Right. Now, did the nations, are they following the Lord? Do they reverence the name of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai? The answer to that is no. We're going to show you. Malachi chapter 1 and 14. But cursed be the deceiver, which hath in his flock a male, and voweth and sacrifices unto the Lord a corrupt thing, right? Because the Lord, Yahweh, he requires a spotless sacrifice. You cannot bring, some, messed up, crooked foot or spotted or, have some type of blemish. The Lord don't want that. Here it is. You got a nice, male lamb that's perfect, but you want to save that and you want to vow to the Lord some bullshit. The Lord ain't having that. For I am a great king, saith Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai of hosts. And my name is dreadful among the heathen. So they're not going to reverence the Most High. All right? But when the kingdom of heaven is established, they will have to. And matter of fact, let me get that real quick. Just hold on to this. We're going to go to that. See, these jakes, they're too busy bent on trying to save everybody else. They care about every other nation except for their own. The heathen are not going to be partakers with us. The heathen were set up to be our slaves, and that's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No way around that. But you're gonna, I was studying, I was reading the scripture, and I found the smackdown on the Gentiles that won't be able to be a partaker with us. Nope. You failed once again, my man. So let's look up the word dreadful here. Doesn't sound like a very good word, does it? So the name of the Lord, just the name of the Lord is dreadful. And how do we know that? When you go back to the deliverance from Egypt. Them nations was nervous. They were scared. They didn't want Edom, Moab. They didn't even want us to walk through their land. That's how much fear they had of the Most High. When Jake, went into to take over, what was the name of that first city they took over? But they walked around 7 times, Jericho. When they went to take over Jericho, what happened? Two spies went there, and Rahab the harlot, put them aside, hid them from the guards that were looking for them. And she said, "Look, swear unto me that you have mercy on me and my family, because we heard of Yahweh, we heard of your power, we know that He's given you everything, and the fear of the people is falling upon the fear of you is falling upon the people." Okay, so the word yara or yara'ah, which is to be afraid, to fear, revere, be afraid. So they're afraid of the Most High's name. To make afraid, terrify. So the name of the Most High is terrible, dreadful. The nations are terrified of that name. So they're not going to come and reverence that name. Let's read that again. The last part of this. It says, for I am a great king, saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, and my name is dreadful among the heathen. Let's see what it says in the NLT. Just want to go straight to the point. For I am a great king, says the Lord Yahweh of heaven's armies, and my name is feared among the nations. This is the NIV. For I am a great king, saith the Lord Almighty, and my name is to be feared among the nations. Let's see what it says in let me see, what's the NET say? And my name is awesome. Name is feared. The BBE. My name is glorious. Now, dreadful, dreadful, feared. So them nations are not going to come and bow. So show me the nation today that's doing this. Show me the heathens today that are doing this. You know, they diligently learn the ways of the Most High. They're swearing by the Lord's name. You know, that ain't happening. But in the kingdom of heaven, they're going to be forced. Because if they don't, then there's going to be problems, situations, and repercussions. All right, so this is Zechariah chapter 14. And 16. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem, this is dealing in the kingdom of heaven, shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So in the kingdom of heaven, they're going to have to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Right now, as we speak, the Feast of Tabernacles is only given to the Israelites to reverence and worship. Let's go to Leviticus 23. Let me see if I can find it. Right. Leviticus 23:39. Also, in the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath. On the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. And you shall, this proves that the Sabbath cycles come, every 8 days. 6 days work be done, 7 days of Sabbath. Then from that Sabbath to the next Sabbath, it'll be an 8-day period, which proves that the new moon, which is the beginning of the month, is the beginning of the Sabbath cycles for the month, because it is a Sabbath. And then 6 days after that, you do the work. The next day is which is the 8th day, is the Sabbath, because it's the 7th day from the work week. It says, and you shall take on the first day the boughs of goodly trees, branches, and palm trees, and the boughs of thick trees and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your power 7 days. Right, that's dealing with the Feast of Tabernacles. And you shall keep it a feast unto the Lord 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelite born shall dwell in booths. Okay? So that's not dealing with the heathen. Only the Israelites kept the Passover. We can go to that, where the Israelites were the only ones that kept the Passover. Exodus 12:43. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. So the heathens could not eat of the Passover. But every man's servant that is bought with money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. This is dealing with an Israelite that is an indentured servant. A foreigner, an actual heathen, and an hired servant, an actual heathen, shall not eat thereof. Is this a contradiction? No. The contradiction or the misunderstanding comes in the wording. You have servant here, you have servant there. You have stranger here, you have stranger there. Like when you read down here, 48 verse, and when the stranger shall sojourn with thee and will keep the Passover. Wait a minute. So can the stranger keep it or not? This is why you got to go back to the Hebrew in the case of the Old Testament. Here, the word stranger should be nakar or bun nakar. Nakar, bun nakar. actual stranger. Now, 5% of the time in the Old Testament, it applies to the Israelites, as in the case of Jeremiah, the 2nd chapter. Right? When you go down to the 48th verse, you have the word stranger there, and you have the word gar. Gar is sojourner. Gawar is sojourn. Okay? This is a temporary inhabitant, Israelite, that was not born in the land of Israel. He was born somewhere else, but he comes to Jerusalem to keep the Passover, to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread, to keep, which is the same thing, to keep, the Feast of Weeks, to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, and they would dwell in the land temporarily. Then they would go back to their land, but they had to make sure that when they did come once a year, that their males were circumcised. Okay? So when you go back to Zechariah 14 and 16, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Israelites would keep it. Now, when the kingdom of heaven is established, the heathen have to keep it. They will be forced to keep it. And it shall be that whosoever will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. Now, I'm going to show you something. Hopefully I can remember. Let's see. Now, let's go to 2 Kings 17. Right, you can read the whole chapter. This is a very important chapter in history. It shows you how the northern kingdom was kicked out of the land of Samaria, and the heathen were placed there. 2 Kings 17:24. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cuthah, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. Okay? They're in the land. They were transplanted. We were removed, brought to Assyria. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord, because they're heathens. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. So the lions were roasting that ass. They had the mastery over them. You have a movie called Ghost in the Darkness, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, where you had these two lions somewhere in Africa that were jacking people up. I mean, they was tearing people up. I believe it was at night. And they couldn't kill them for nothing. So the Lord put a vicious spirit on these lions to kill some of these heathens, because they were placed in the land and they were following their demonic custom that they were following, which the Lord kicked out the Canaanites out of their land because of that. Right? Now listen good. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the God of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the power of the land. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, carry hither one of the priests. It was only one priest that went back, an Israelite, a Levite, right? Levite priest went back. One of the priests which ye brought from thence, and let them go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the power of the land. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel, okay, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. Okay, remember, my man said over here in Jeremiah 12 and 16, and it shall come to pass that they will diligently learn the ways of my people to swear by my name, the Lord liveth, as they taught my people to swear by Baal, then shall they be built in the midst of my people. Okay? And they would be slaves. Anyways. So he went and taught them. Howbeit, every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. So they learned the ways of the Lord, but still worship their images, still worship their gods. And the men of Babylon made Succoth Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Avites made Nibhas and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burnt their children in the fire to Adremelech and Ahimelech and Anemelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. So they feared the Lord. They kept certain things that the Lord, taught they were taught by the priests, and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the house of the high places. They feared the Lord and served their own gods, after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. So they're not going to learn the ways of the Lord. The name of the Lord is dreadful. Okay? Yeah, I believe that was a true story about the ghost and the lion, something like that. The ghost in the darkness. All right, now, if the case were that they actually were following the laws of the Lord and he was going to set them among the people, should not have our forefathers accepted them? Ezra 4:1. Now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the children of the captivity builded the temple unto the Lord power of Israel, this is during the time of the building of the second temple, then they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief of the fathers and said unto them, let us build with you, for we seek your God as you do, and we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Ashur, which brought us up hither. Now this Esarhaddon, which was a king of Assyria, this was a king that came later on. The first one that kicked Israel out was Shalmaneser, the fifth. Later on, because this name, I believe it appears again in the scriptures. And this was a different king, but he came later. Esarhaddon, Ashur has given a brother, king of Assyria in the 7th century BC. Right here, 2 Kings 1937. And it came to pass as he was worshiping in the house of Nisroch, his god. This was dealing with one of those Assyrian kings. I forget which one it was. That Adremelech and Sharezer, his sons, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia. And Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. So this was the king later on, after Shalmaneser, that ruled, in the kingdom. And he also transplanted, more heathens into the land of Samaria. Okay, just, little tidbit, little nugget. So going back, so it says, then they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief, this is Ezra 4:2, and to the chief of the fathers and said unto them, let us build with you, for we seek your power as you do, and we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Ashur, who brought us up hither. But Zerubbabel and Joshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, you have nothing to do to build with us unto the house of our power. The same thing that Yahushai told the woman at the well, which was the actual heathen. He told her the same exact thing. St. John chapter 4. And verse 20. Our fathers, this is the woman, this heathen. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you say that in Jerusalem is a place where men ought to worship. Yahushua said unto her, woman, believe me, the hour cometh when you shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship you know not what. So what your fathers were put in that land? So what you heathens were put into that land? You don't know what the hell you're worshiping because you're not an Israelite. It says, we know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews or of the Israelites. He didn't say of the Israelites or of, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, and Ephraim, and Simeon, and Manasseh, and Gad. He didn't say all that because she didn't understand that. All them heathens understood was Jews, which was a term that was established by Nebuchadnezzar. He called this, all the tribes, he called them Judeans. The southern kingdom, he just called them Judeans or Jews. That's where the term came from. All right? But you had different tribes, so that's why Yahweh had to use the terminology that she understood. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. The Most High is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. You are a heathen. Yeah, yep. Idris Elba stars in the movie called The Beast, dealing with lions effing up people. Yeah, that was a good movie, except for the part where, he was popping that little boy. That was disgusting. But other than that, there was a very good movie. I mean, they didn't actually show you him doing that, but they, implied it, boy, when he went up, You brothers that saw the movie know what I'm talking about. All right, so these heathens have nothing to do with us. And our forefathers told them, back in Ezra 4:3, you have nothing to do with us to build to our power, building house unto our power, but we ourselves together will build unto Yahweh the power of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, hath commanded us. Okay? And that's the bottom line. So this scripture here that this guy tried to bring out, this is not a free pass for the heathen to come into this thing, because their only job is to be servants, slaves. And does not say that, you will be a part. No, they said if you reverence the Most High, if you swear by his name, then you will be built, among or in the midst of my people. And what is the job of the heathen? We read it in Leviticus 25 that their job is to be servants and slaves. That's it. I don't know where this whole, save humanity comes from. And I believe he went to Acts 17 chapter. I believe he went to Acts 17 chapter, because I watched some of that madness. I didn't watch the whole thing. It's only like a little over 9 minutes long. Acts 17, and I believe it's 26. Acts 17:26, and hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the earth, and have determined the time before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. I'm not sure if you read anything else. Yeah, and the Lord created all people of one blood. So what? But he did create them of one blood. All the peoples that are on the face of the earth come from Adam, but there was a separation. Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam. Why did he separate them? Because you had his chosen people, the Israelites, which are the saints, the holies, because he gave us laws, statutes, commandments, which separated us from the other nations. So if he wanted all nations to come together, why didn't he just give everybody the laws, statutes, and commandments and just say, everybody just get along? It says he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel, because every nation got their lands first, and we got our land last, but we got the best lands. And the land that we got was based off of a prophecy going back to Genesis, the 9th chapter, where the Lord caused Noah to put a curse on Ham's son Canaan. A servant shall you be unto your brethren. And that's why when The Lord brought our forefathers out of the land of Egypt after the 40 years in the wilderness. Then it was time to take over that land that was just being kept warm by the Canaanites. And they had cultivated the land. They had animals. They had everything. And the Lord just said, go in there, wipe them out, and take over the land. It says, for the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is a lot of his inheritance, not the other nations. The other nations were created to be slaves. Bottom line, that's it. Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 15. Behold, the nations outside of the nation of Israel are as a drop of a bucket. If you take a drop out of a big bucket of water, you're not going to miss that drop. You're not going to be like, oh, I've got to start all over again. I lost one drop. No. And are counted as a small dust of the balance. When you measure flour or whatever the case may be on a balance, and you take it off, and there's a little bit of that dust, that doesn't weigh anything. You're not worried about, oh, damn, I should have got that little bit of dust off because that was extra $7 or whatever. No, you wasn't thinking about that. That's how the Lord feels about these nations. Behold, he taketh up the houses of every little thing, and Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beast thereof sufficient for a burnt offering. So you can take all of the trees, the best trees, and all of the animals, and burn them up as a sacrifice to the Most High. He's still not going to accept you. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel. All nations, besides the nation of Israel, before him are as what? Nothing. And they are counted to him less than nothing and vanity. And all they were created for was to be servants, possessions, slaves, slave men, slave women. That's it. What does it say in the NLT? The nations of the world are worth nothing to him. See, in his eyes they count for less than nothing, mere emptiness and froth. Yeah, damn. And let me see, is this the one? And then the other one in the Apocrypha says that there's spittle unto the Lord. That's spit. When you spit, you're not concerned with that spit. It just stays on the sidewalk. And it eventually dries up. You don't go back 2 weeks later wondering what happened to that spit. And that's how the Lord feels about these nations. So these Jakes, man, they're trying to bend over backwards, trying to save the nations. The nations cannot be saved. And Jeremiah 12 and 16 is not a free pass for the nations to get into this. So that little fire thing there, you could extinguish that. All right. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.